Imagine a day when 10,000 Spartan warriors marched across Greece with a single burning purpose: to avenge their fallen brothers. Picture the moment when the greatest military force of the ancient world confronted the Persian Empire on Greek soil, determined to expel the invaders forever. This is the story of the Battle of Plataea, fought in 479 BC. Epic confrontation that would decide whether Greece remained free or fell under Persian domination. This is not merely a tale of warfare. It is a narrative of courage tested beyond human limits, of strategic brilliance emerging from desperation, of honor demanding satisfaction regardless of cost, and of revenge pursued with methodical determination. For those who appreciate military history, ancient civilizations, and the pivotal moments that shaped our world, this account will transport you to the dusty plains of Boeotia, where the fate of Western civilization hung in the balance. To fully grasp the magnitude of what occurred at Plataea, we must first journey back 1 year earlier to the summer of 480 BC, to a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae. There, King Leonidas of Sparta led his legendary 300 warriors, accompanied by several thousand Greek allies, to face an invasion force of staggering proportions. This was not simply another military engagement. It was a defining demonstration to the entire world of what it meant to be Spartan. The Persian Empire, under King Xerxes, had mobilized what contemporary sources describe as the largest army ever assembled in human history up to that point. Ancient historians speak of millions of soldiers, though modern scholars estimate more conservative, yet still impressive numbers between 200,000 and 300,000 combatants. This colossal military machine advanced through Greece with a clear objective: to subjugate all the Greek city-states and incorporate them into the vast empire that stretched from the borders of India to the deserts of Egypt. Leonidas understood from the beginning that he could not win a conventional battle at Thermopylae. His mission was far more complex and strategically sophisticated than simply defeating the Persians in direct combat. He needed to buy time, precious days and hours that would allow the Greek city-states to organize their defenses, evacuate civilian populations, and prepare their forces for future confrontations. The Thermopylae Pass, with its narrow path squeezed between mountains on one side and the sea on the other, offered the perfect defensive position for this purpose in that confined space. The astronomical number of Persian soldiers became irrelevant. They could not deploy in large formations or bring their numerical superiority to bear. The Spartans, trained from childhood in the art of warfare and masters of the phalanx formation, could hold a vastly superior force at bay for days, and hold they did. For 3 consecutive days, the 300 Spartans and their Greek allies repelled wave after wave of Persian attacks with devastating effectiveness. The Spartan phalanx functioned like a perfectly synchronized war machine, each component essential to the whole. Each warrior carried a heavy shield of bronze and wood called a hoplon, which partially overlapped the shield of the companion beside him, creating an impenetrable wall. Their long spears, measuring approximately 2.5 meters, projected through the gaps between shields, forming a deadly barrier of bronze points. When the Persians attacked, they encountered not individual fighters, but a single organism, a collective entity that moved and reacted with precision measured in millimeters. Xerxes' warriors, drawn from various nations under Persian rule, carried varied equipment and employed distinct tactics. Many wore lighter armor, carried smaller shields made of wicker and leather, and wielded shorter spears. Against the Spartans' iron discipline and superior equipment, they simply could not break through the defensive lines. Xerxes, watching from his golden throne position to observe the battle, grew increasingly frustrated as wave after wave of his soldiers were repelled or destroyed. He sent his best troops, including the feared immortals, the elite Persian guard of 10,000 warriors who always maintained that exact number by immediately replacing casualties. Even these legendary soldiers, considered invincible throughout the empire, were repelled by the Spartans. The Greek historian Herodotus records that Xerxes rose from his throne 3 times during the battle, fearing for the fate of his army as he watched the impossible occur before his eyes. But betrayal changed everything. A local Greek named Ephialtes, motivated by promises of Persian gold, revealed the existence of a mountain trail that bypassed the Spartan position. During the night, a Persian force marched along this secret path, and at dawn on the third day, Leonidas realized his position was surrounded. It was at this critical moment that the Spartan king made his final decision, the choice that would echo through history. He dismissed most of the Greek allies, allowing them to return to their cities and continue the resistance. The 300 Spartans would remain. Joining them were 700 Thespians who refused to abandon their allies and 400 Thebans. Leonidas knew with absolute certainty that there would be no survivors. This would be a last stand, a deliberate sacrifice that would become the stuff of legend. The final battle was everything that Spartan warriors trained their entire lives to face. They fought to the last man, initially with their spears until the shafts broke, then continuing with their swords. When their swords shattered, they fought with daggers and bare hands. Herodotus recounts that when the carnage finally ended, the Persians found Leonidas' body among the fallen. Xerxes, in his fury at the losses inflicted upon his forces, ordered disrespectful treatment of the Spartan king's remains, an act considered outrageous by the customs of the time, when even enemies were expected to receive dignified burial. News of Thermopylae's fall spread throughout Greece like wildfire, carried by desperate winds. In Sparta, mothers, wives, and sisters received confirmation that their men would not return. But Spartan culture did not value displays of weakness or excessive public lamentation. There exists a famous account of a Spartan mother who, upon receiving news that all 5 of her sons had fallen in battle, simply asked whether Sparta had won. When told yes, she replied that she could die happy. This mentality, extreme by any standard, including contemporary Greek ones, formed the foundation of Spartan society. But Thermopylae was not in vain. Leonidas' sacrifice bought exactly what he intended, time. While the 300 held the Persians at the pass, the Greek fleet confronted the Persian navy in nearby waters at the Battle of Artemisium. More importantly, the Greek city-states used this precious time to evacuate populations. Athens made the extraordinary and courageous decision to abandon the city entirely, sending women, children, and the elderly to other regions, while converting all men of fighting age into sailors or soldiers. Xerxes advanced through central Greece and captured Athens, finding a virtually deserted city. In his fury, he ordered the city sacked and burned. The Acropolis, the sacred hill where Athens' ancient temples stood, was set ablaze. Treasures accumulated over generations were plundered. Xerxes sent messengers back to Persia, announcing his complete victory over the Greeks. But he had not won. The Greek fleet, under the command of the brilliant Athenian general Themistocles, lured the Persian armada into the straits between the island of Salamis and the Greek mainland. In those confined waters, the heavy and numerous Persian ships lost their advantages of number and maneuverability. The smaller, more agile Greek vessels decimated the Persian fleet, while Xerxes watched the destruction of his navy from a golden throne positioned on a nearby hill. Asterisk. The Battle of Salamis in September 480 BC was a complete disaster for Persian naval power. With his fleet destroyed, Xerxes faced a catastrophic logistical problem. His immense army depended on supplies transported by sea. Without naval dominance, maintaining hundreds of thousands of soldiers in hostile territory became impossible. The emperor made a pragmatic decision. He would return to Persia with the bulk of his forces, but would leave a substantial army under the command of Mardonius. His most competent general is to complete the conquest of Greece the following spring. Mardonius was an experienced Persian nobleman, Xerxes' own brother-in-law, who had advocated for the Greek invasion from the beginning. He established his winter camp in Thessaly and spent the cold months reorganizing his forces, recruiting Greek allies who had chosen to collaborate with Persia, and planning the spring campaign that would, he believed, finally crush Greek resistance. During the winter of 482-479 BC, the Greek city-states that had chosen resistance met in various war councils. The situation was complex and precarious. Many Greek cities had surrendered or allied with the Persians through fear, political opportunism, or strategic calculation. Athens was destroyed, its population dispersed. Greek unity itself remained tenuous, threatened by ancient rivalries between city-states and Sparta. The memory of Thermopylae burned with an intensity that demanded satisfaction. The Spartans had lost their king and their finest 300 warriors. For a society that valued military excellence and honor in combat above all else, that loss demanded revenge. Finally, after intense negotiations, the Greek cities agreed to form a pan-Hellenic alliance under Spartan leadership. Sparta pledged to send its entire military force, something unprecedented in their history. 5,000 Spartans, the complete warrior citizenry, would march north. Accompanying them would be 5,000 Perioiko, free men who lived in regions around Sparta and served as heavy infantry, as well-trained as the Spartans themselves. Additionally, 35,000 Helots would accompany the army as light infantry and support personnel. Athens, despite its city being in ruins, mobilized 8,000 hoplites. Corinth sent 5,000, Megara 2,000. When all forces assembled, the Greek army totaled approximately 100,000 men, including about 40,000 hoplites of heavy infantry, the core of Greek military power. Supreme command was given to Pausanias, Leonidas' nephew and regent of Sparta. As Leonidas' son was still too young to rule, Pausanias was approximately 25 years old but already an experienced and astute commander. He understood that this battle would define not only Greece's fate, but also his own position in history. At his side stood Aristides, the Athenian general known as the Just for his reputation of incorruptible integrity. This partnership between Spartan commander and Athenian general symbolized the fragile yet essential Greek unity. In the spring of 479 BC, Mardonius began his campaign with diplomacy. He sent messengers to Athens offering generous terms, autonomy, funds to rebuild, territorial expansion. The Athenian assembly debated intensely. Some argued that resistance was futile, that accepting terms now would save lives. Others, led by Aristides and Themistocles, argued that freedom was priceless, and that Persian rule, even with apparent autonomy, would mean the end of Athenian democracy and the Greek way of life. The assembly voted to reject the Persian offer. Marda, interpreting rejection as renewed war declaration, marched on Athens again. For the second time in less than a year, Athenians evacuated their city and watched from Salamis as Persians completed the destruction they had begun. Mardonius hoped this would break Athenian will. It had the opposite effect. Now there was no possibility of reconciliation. War would continue until final victory or total annihilation. The Greek army under Pausanias marched north. The route led across the Isthmus of Corinth up the peninsula to Boeotia, where Mardonius had established his position. Pausanias was in no hurry. He knew that time and logistics now favored the Greeks. The longer Mardonius remained in Greek territory on stretched supply lines, the more difficult his situation would become. Mardonius carefully chose his battlefield near the city of Plataea in Boeotia. On a wide plain suitable for his numerous cavalry, the Persians were masters of cavalry warfare, with mounted archers who could harass enemy formations from distance. Mardonius had a fortified camp built with wooden palisades, a secure base for retreat if necessary. His forces included remnants of Xerxes' army and contingents from subjugated nations, as well as Greek allies, particularly Thebans, who had chosen the Persian side. When the two armies finally sighted each other in the summer of 479 BC near Plataea, one of antiquity's most remarkable confrontations began. Pausanias observed the terrain Mardonius had chosen and immediately perceived the danger. Descending to the plain would expose Greek hoplites to Persian mounted archers who could circle the phalanx formation, attacking from all sides. Pausanias positioned the Greek army on high ground south of the Asopus River, which ran between the armies, for more than a week. The armies remained in their positions, observing each other across the plain. Mardonius sent cavalry on harassing attacks, trying to provoke the Greeks down to the plain. Mounted Persian archers galloped close to Greek lines, fired arrows, and retreated before heavy Greek infantry could counterattack. Pausanias maintained iron discipline. forbidding any pursuit or hasty response. Knowing this was exactly what Mardonius wanted, the situation began deteriorating for the Greeks. When Persian cavalry scored a significant strategic blow, in one attack, Persian horsemen located and destroyed the Gargaphia Spring, the main water source for the Greek army. Furthermore, they intercepted and destroyed a supply convoy from the south. Suddenly, 100,000 Greek soldiers found themselves in an untenable position, without adequate water and with supplies cut off. Pausanias convened a war council. The decision was made during the night. The army would move to a new position closer to Plataea with better access to water and supply lines. Moving an army of 100,000 men at night while maintaining cohesion and discipline was extraordinarily difficult. Not surprisingly, the operation did not go perfectly. When the sun rose, the Greek army was scattered in a disorganized line with large gaps between divisions. Mardonius, observing from his position, could hardly believe his luck. The Greek army that had maintained iron discipline for days was now fragmented and vulnerable. He immediately ordered a general attack. Persian cavalry attacked first, followed by infantry. What seemed an easy victory was about to become one of the bloodiest and most decisive battles in ancient history. The Athenians on the left flank were attacked first by Boeotian infantry led by Thebans. Despite the surprise, Athenians quickly formed phalanxes and resisted. The combat was intense. Thebans were Greeks like Athenians, trained in the same tactics, equipped with similar weapons. The Athenians, fighting for their city's survival, gradually began pushing the Thebans back. The critical situation was where the Spartans and Perioca were positioned. Persian cavalry had partially surrounded them, firing endless waves of arrows. The Spartans formed defensive phalanx, shields raised, creating protective cover against arrows. But they could not move without breaking formation and becoming even more vulnerable. Mardonius launched his elite Persian infantry against them. Pausanias was in a desperate position. His army was divided. Athenians fought isolated against Thebans. Smaller units from other cities were scattered. And he, with 10,000 Spartans in Perioika, was surrounded by superior Persian forces being devastated by arrows. Spartans were not trained for prolonged defensive combat. They were trained to advance, to seize initiative, to destroy the enemy in close combat. Pausanias knew he could wait no longer. He offered urgent prayers and finally gave the order: attack. The Spartans responded as if freed from chains. The roar of 10,000 warriors echoed across the plain as Spartan phalanxes advanced. What followed was pure demonstration of Greek phalanx. Supremacy in close combat when well executed. The Spartans did not rush wildly. They advanced in uniform step, maintaining perfect formation, an impenetrable wall of bronze and iron rolling toward Persian lines. When they reached Persian shield walls, the superiority of Greek equipment and training became evident. Persian wicker shields, suitable for protecting archers, could not withstand the massive impact of Spartan phalanx. Large hopland shields of Spartans, made of solid wood covered with bronze, simply crushed Persian defenses. Long Greek spears pierced Persian lines. The Persians fought bravely. These were veterans of dozens of campaigns, professional soldiers of an empire dominating half the known world. But they were equipped and trained for different warfare. Their tactics depended on maneuver, on using archers to weaken enemies at distance. In direct hand-to-hand combat against the most disciplined and heavily armed infantry in the world, they were at severe disadvantage. Mardonius, observing his elite infantry being decimated, made a desperate and courageous decision. He personally led a counterattack, mounted on a white horse, surrounded by his personal guard of 1,000 chosen warriors. His presence temporarily revitalized Persian resistance. But in the chaos of battle, Mardonius was struck down. The Persian commander was dead. The death of Mardonius was catastrophic for Persian morale. Without their commander, the Persian army began to disintegrate. Units that had fought fiercely moments before now sought salvation. The Persians retreated to their fortified camp, pursued by Greeks. The Athenians, having defeated the Thebans, reached the camp and scaled the palisades. The Greek army flooded the camp in final defeat. Herodotus estimates that of approximately 100,000 Persian and allied soldiers under Mardonius' command, fewer than 3,000 survived. Greek losses, while significant, were a fraction of that. The Battle of Plataea was over. The Greeks had won decisively. The Persian army that had terrorized Greece for 2 years was destroyed. The threat of Persian conquest of mainland Greece had ended. Pausanias ordered spoils gathered. The wealth in the Persian camp was immense. He ordered Mardonius cooks to prepare a typical Persian meal with all its opulence, and simultaneously ordered a simple Spartan meal prepared. He summoned Greek commanders and pointed to the two meals, saying words that would be remembered. See the folly of the Persian commander who, possessing this abundance, came to take our misery from us. The spoils were divided according to carefully negotiated rules. 1/10 was reserved for offerings to the gods. Large monuments were commissioned at Delphi and Olympia celebrating the victory. The remainder was divided proportionally among city-states. The fallen received burial with full military honors. But the Spartans' revenge wasn't just in casualties inflicted. It lay in the deeper meaning of victory at Thermopylae. 300 Spartans had died holding an impossible line, buying time with their lives. That sacrifice had been validated, justified, avenged 1,000 times over at Plataea. The time Leonidas bought allowed Greece to organize resistance. The courage he demonstrated inspired all of Greece not to surrender. And now 10,000 Spartans had marched north and completely shattered the army that had killed their 300. Brothers, the victory at Plataea had consequences extending far beyond the immediate battlefield. Politically, it consolidated the Hellenic League and demonstrated that Greek city-states could, when necessary, set aside rivalries and work together. Sparta emerged with immense military prestige, indisputably recognized as the supreme land force of Greece. Culturally, the Greco-Persian Wars, and especially the victories at Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea, became fundamental elements of Greek identity. These events were celebrated in poetry, drama, art, and monuments. They demonstrated that the Greek way of life, based on free citizens of independent city-states, could withstand the Persian imperial model of centralized autocracy. From a military standpoint, Plataea confirmed the supremacy of the hoplite phalanx in frontal combat when well commanded on favorable terrain. The tactics and equipment Spartans used at Plataea would continue dominating Greek warfare for over a century until eventually challenged by Macedonian innovations of Philip II and Alexander the Great. To fully understand Plataea's significance, we must consider what would have happened if Persians had won. If Mardonius had crushed the Greek army, Greek resistance would likely have collapsed completely. Greece would have been incorporated into the Persian Empire. Athenian democracy would likely have been eliminated. The subsequent cultural flourishing of classical Greece would not have occurred in the same way. Furthermore, Greek victory over Persia had implications for all subsequent Western history. Greek culture, particularly in its developed form after the Persian Wars, would eventually be adopted by Romans. Through Rome, Greek concepts of democracy, rational philosophy, empirical science, and political values based on citizenship and law spread throughout Europe. The lessons of Plataea resonate through millennia. The battle demonstrates the power of discipline, training, and superior equipment over numerical advantages. It shows that quality can overcome quantity when strategically positioned. It illustrates that courage and sacrifice, as demonstrated at Thermopylae, can inspire entire nations and eventually lead to victory, even against seemingly impossible odds. For the Spartans specifically, Plataea completely validated their unique way of life. For generations, they had built their entire society around producing superior warriors. They had sacrificed trade, arts, philosophy, comfort, everything in favor of military excellence. At Plataea, when Greek civilization faced its greatest threat, it was the Spartans who saved everyone. When 10,000 Spartans marched north that summer of 479 BC, they carried with them memories of the 300 who had fallen at Thermopylae. Each warrior knew it could be his fate to fall in battle far from home. But they marched anyway, for that was what it meant to be Spartan. They marched for survival of their way of life, for freedom of their cities, for their families and descendants, and yes, for the immortal glory that victory would bring. And when the order to attack finally came at Plataea, they advanced as their 300 comrades had advanced at Thermopylae, without hesitation, without fear, ready to die but determined to win. The victory they achieved that day avenged the 300 1,000 times over. It proved that the sacrifice at Thermopylae had not been in vain. It saved Greece and preserved the civilization that would shape the Western world. This is the story of the Battle of Plataea, where 10,000 Spartans marched to avenge their fallen brothers and, in doing so, changed the course of human history forever.